So believe it or not, out of all the Dream Theater videos we've done on this channel, we have yet to do an official Dream Theater album review.
The last one we did was just it was a compilation.
It was a playlist I wanted to see if I could get you into Dream Theater, and that's kind of why I picked today's album, because the way you get someone into Dream Theater is first you play them Train of Thought, and then you play them Images and Words. I don't think it matters which one you start first, but you play them the two. You ask them what you like about both of them, then you steer them in the direction. I actually have a flowchart someone made on Reddit that I'll put in the video. Train of Thought, one of my personal favorite Dream Theater albums. I don't think it's their absolute greatest album, and that's only a testament to acknowledge that Scenes from a Memory and Awake exist, because you're Metalhead, obviously, so you're really into the heavy stuff. And this is their heaviest and darkest album. This is probably one we should have done for the Halloween episode next week.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Look at the cover. Right. We do eventually want to cover all of the Dream Theater albums. So if you want to come back, see what we think of those, let us know which Dream Theater album you want to see next.
And leave a like.
The first track here, if I understand, is one of your Dream Theater favorites, As I Am, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll get into that. We covered this one, at least from your perspective. This was one of my favorite Dream Theater songs when I was first getting into them too, so I understand why it would be your favorite. It's a great introduction track. It's one of their most popular ones. The fade in of that note, you know what I'm talking about? And then it starts with Myung's bass. So that is actually the last note from 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, and it's part of what they call a meta album transition. So that started from Scenes from a Memory, where it was the static scratching. The static scratching opens 6 Degrees with the Glass Prison, and then the last note on 6 Degrees carries over to this one, and then the last one on this one carries over to Octavarium, and that's where it stops.
That's actually fantastic.
The beginning bass, I think, really sets the tone for the darkness and the heaviness of the album. This is actually a message to the label from, I believe Petrucci wrote these lyrics, kind of documenting it. He doesn't say it's about a specific time in Dream Theater's history, but one can infer from their falling into infinity issues that they had with the label. It's about that time and how they were pressuring the hell out of them to make this mainstream pop album. They came out with Falling Into Infinity. Turns out they were wrong. And then they gave them the freedom to do Metropolis Part 2. It's one of their best albums. It might be a top 10 Dream Theater song, but they just have so many other good songs. I don't know if I'd still put it there, but because of the importance it holds in its discography, I gave it a 9.5.
All right, that's what I like. You telling me that that's how it starts with the last note?
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. Even without knowing that knowledge, the way it fades in, I think is still great. Like you said, the whole thought of this album is the dark feel to it. As an intro song, this one definitely takes the cake. The harmonics in the beginning with the bass are great. It's actually funny whenever I look up bass covers for this, 90% of the people skip that part. They don't do the harmonics.
Hard, right? The harmonics.
They don't. Yeah, it's too hard. They don't want to do it. I love the part when the drums kind of first kick in and Portnoy is doing the crash.
Yeah.
With it, like that's great. The way the guitar screaks, I think that's awesome. That it kicks into it. Then you get the first real riff. My favorite riff is the second one, where it's like the really fast scale. It's like that's my favorite.
Right before the first verse.
Right before the verse. I'm not a huge fan. Like I know with you are with Maiden with Bruce, you're not a huge fan. I'm also not a huge fan of James Labrie, but I think for this song it worked.
You know the story of his shrimp incident, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that might
stay
away from shrimp. Hearing this song for the first time, I was like, it didn't sound like Dream Theater. The first thing I really listened to was Scenes from Memory. I wasn't used to this heavy metal, like traditional heavy metal sound, which is awesome. From what I've listened to, this is still probably my favorite.
Yeah, you're just getting into Dream Theater, so I'd expect that. Yeah.
So it's still my favorite Dream Theater song. I gave it a 9.
Nice. Some background, I don't know if you know this, but this is actually part of Mike Portnoy's 12-step suite. But it pretty much documents Mike Portnoy's struggle and recovery with alcoholism and the steps to recovery. Actually, is the Shattered Fortress was the last part of this suite.
Justin.
Respect, kindness, courtesy.
Inventory.
Accounts payable. The roaring intro really sets the stage for a continuation of that dark, heavy theme. I love the key solo, too, right before the first verse when Labrie kicks in. That's one of Rudis's best, in my opinion. This is really one of Rudis's best albums, I think. Then, right after the first hook, it kind of takes an interesting turn where James Labrie decides he's going to be a rapper and tried to break Eminem's Godzilla record. I'm glad they've never done that ever again. Please don't. And around 7:15, you really start to wonder what they were thinking. And then you kind of just have to turn the song off because it gets pretty unbearable. But It's just a shame because the intro, the beginning, all the way up to like halfway through the song is just stellar. And then it just becomes one of the worst parts of Dream Theater's discography. But because the intro is so good, I gave it a 7.
I'm glad that we're on the same wavelength for that. As I agree, the beginning is great. Coming off of As I Am, it's a little weak as a continuation. So yeah, I'd have to give it weak 7, strong 6.5.
Endless Sacrifice is a hell of a roller coaster. It's not confirmed, but it's theorized that Petrucci wrote this about the feeling of being on tour, you know, missing your family, the constant sacrifices that you have to make, just being away from your family for the whole year. I think you talked about how Maiden toured for 365 years, 365 years, 365 years. Imagine not being home for a year.
Yeah,
you know,
rough.
just living in hotels for a year. That's quite a sacrifice, but you make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, that's always a little 50. Like, I understand the struggle, but it's like I get it. It's your job, but like you're fucking rich.
The chorus, I think, is one of their best. You know, try to stay alive. I love that part. The hook, and then they add on to it at around 4 minutes. They prog out a little bit later in the song, which I know you're not a big fan of. It's definitely acquired taste. Around 8 minutes, they came back with one of the most hardcore riffs I've ever heard in my life and tried to just Marty McFly you to the back of the room. This is actually one of my favorites overall on the entire album, so I gave this one a 9.
Definitely the beginning for me, it sounded like some of the old school metal that I've listened to over the years. So I like that they captured that essence with their own style. The chorus works. It's got that feel to it of like the heavy metal. And then they go into their prog, which I understand the talent and the skill that you need to do the prog music. And I just wish that I could like it more. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like it's insane. It's hard to play and it takes a long time to write. But as a listener, when I'm listening to it, when 2 minutes have passed and Petrucci's on his 7th guitar solo, I'm kind of like, all right. And then I agree when it comes back with the main chorus, really kicks ass. So I give it an 8.
Remember that K-Mac video where he said the drum fill? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I think he wrote that one about this song. If you couldn't tell by the opening filler, this is another Portnoy written song. The Genius description, very professional, says here, Honor Thy Father is a hard-hitting track and heavy track dedicated to calling out his asshole of a stepfather that he felt never showed him the love and care a father should have. This is one of the darkest, heaviest in Dream Theater's discography. And on a dark, heavy album, it really stands out. Fun fact, if your name's not Kyle and you ever find yourself in need of punching through drywall for some reason, maybe you're in like a burning building or something, you got to put this song on or else you won't be able to do it.
Oh, that's good.
In the early back half, they kind of traded that progging out that you're not a big fan of with the movie quotes, which are
that was cool.
On A Lot of Awake. I did appreciate that one as well.
That was cool.
While I don't think it's the best on the record, I think that it brings that it factor the entire runtime. There's not a moment where you're kind of like, okay, it's time to end the song. So because of that reason, I gave it an 8.
There's not like a part where I'm like, I want to skip this. Like, I'm done. The movie quote thing was cool. I didn't expect that with the father and son relationship type aspect, and the drums were good. Definitely dark. And I like the Kyle.
Yeah.
I see people, you come to our channel and you get survival tips. So it's not probably my favorite, but it's still good. So I gave it a 7.5.
Nice. Where do we begin with this next one? Who would have thought I had so much to say about an instrumental? So we'll start with Vacant. The deeply emotional intro, Vacant, was actually penned by James Labrie about his feeling that he had, the feeling of helplessness and sorrow when he was in the hospital and his daughter was in a coma. It interpolates a lot of the following song, which is one of my favorite DT songs ever. The wailing synth in the beginning gives off this high-tech, but at the same time, gritty feel. The creative drum licks by Portnoy. This is one of my favorite Ruda songs in general. The entire song, he just killed it. The distorted metal organ, the rapid-fire horn ensemble. Just when you're starting to lose interest in that first Rudis part, they kick into the lead, the King Crimson riff. Yep. That on top of the distorted organ that he puts in there is just orgasmic. The best part of the whole song, I think, is around 6 minutes when Petrucci takes over that Rudis melody and you just like nut everywhere, like Randy
like
Marsh
Randy,
style. If the volume knob is not turned all the way to the right, and you don't lose hearing after you hear this part, you should be arrested, fined, and thrown in jail for not disturbing the peace. He hits you with that same thing again, and then Rudis puts over the horror movie kind of patch on the keyboard. Rudis snaps again with the piano lead to take you to the final Petrucci lead, and then they take us back to the beginning, and it's kind of like Tenet where they play it in reverse. Mm-hmm. This is, I'll say it again, one of my favorite DT songs ever, at least at the time of this. It changes like every month. Like last month it was Home. I'm only going to give this a 10 because that's the maximum that we can give it. This is like a 69 million out of 10.
Lamau. Wow. Holy shit. I knew you liked it, but I didn't know you liked it that much.
Yeah.
Vacant as an intro. It really sounds like the intro to Westworld, which really grabbed my attention. Really brings you into what's going to happen next. The way they put them together was an excellent touch. And the intro is Vacant, but I guess when Stream actually kicks in with the scales is like fantastic. It is an explosion of just like talent and insanity. You know, like I said before, the whole prog stuff I'm not like the biggest fan of, but for this one, really, really caught my attention. I don't have as much to say as you do, but as a whole, I have to give it 8.5.
So In the Name of God, I think, is one of their most underrated tracks, and I think they wanted to keep it that way because I'd like to go more into the meaning, but in the interest of not getting death threats, I'm not going to. But according to Dream Theater Wiki, this song is about the cult religion, the Davidians. This song was also written right after when the Davidians flew those planes into those towers, and I think Iceland or something.
That was them?
Yeah. The acoustic in the beginning is a nice misdirection from the roaring electric guitar that he puts in the next part. The lyrics are so creatively written. I'd really love to talk more about them, but YouTube is communist and also death threats. I'm not a fan of screaming in general, like the death metal stuff. That's why I can't really get into Opeth too much.
Yeah, no,
but the screaming in this song, I think, kind of added to it. I think it's because it was a lot quieter in the mix, and he still did sing over it, so it kind of gives it that aggression that I think people listen to the screaming for. Rudis actually played the last note of the song with his nose. And the last note of this song is also the first one on Octavarium. If you listen to Root of All Evil, it starts with the same note as this one.
Oh, okay.
Once again, one of their more underrated songs. I think they keep it that way on purpose, so I gave it an 8.5.
It is very obvious, like, what it's about.
Yeah, the Davidians.
The Davidians. Then I found myself listening to the lyrics more once I caught on to like what they were actually going for, and I was like, oh, okay, that's good. And I like that in general with the way religion works and what people do. Megadeth's song Holy Wars is kind of like the same thing as a whole. To end, I don't know if this would be the best ending to it, because
I'd agree. I think if they like switched the placement of these two songs with Stream of Consciousness, I think it would have been.
I probably would have done
ending.
like In the Name of God, Vacant, Stream, and then ended it.
Yeah,
that's probably what I would have done. I gave it an 8.
Pretty solid.
Yeah.
So overall, I do believe this is an S tier Dream Theater album. If you listen to Awake and you listen to Scenes from Memory, it really encompasses who Dream Theater is. This one is a lot more one-dimensional than their other projects. Even A Dramatic Turn of Events really describes who they are. Once again, this is one of the Dream Theater records where every single song you at least want to listen to a part of it. There are no skips on this entire one. Here, I was very clear in the Astroworld review what I think constitutes a 10. Pinnacle artists such as Rush, Zeppelin, Dream Theater,
Bob
and
Dylan,
when we're and we're talking about top 3 works from those artists. Now, obviously, it's not that rigid of a structure, but I feel like if you just give out 10s nonstop, you kind of lose credibility as a reviewer. That being said, this is still in the S tier, one of 3 albums in the S tier, so I have to give it a 10.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to give it like a 4. Because I did independently, secretly listen to
Awake.
We listened to, which nobody got to see yet, Scenes from Memory. It's harder for me to give the ranking because I haven't listened to their entire discography. The dark traditional heavy metal feel was fantastic. The sound and production, the mixing was very good. It's a very satisfying album to listen to. In general, it's a good album to listen to if you're feeling dark and heavy. If you're Kyle and you want to
punch through some drywall.
Yeah, some drywall.
This isn't just like Kyle music. This is like Kyle with taste music. This is like Kyle with a drywall covered fist, like sitting by a fire in the robe. He's got taste, but he's still a Kyle.
I would have to give it an 8.
8. That's pretty solid.
Which is solid. I think as I listen to more Dream Theater down the road, it might go up, but that's what I have to give it.
Excellent.